Thank you for coming here to just learn a little bit more about the new leader for the Senate DFL caucus. My name is Melisa López Franzen. I am a third-termer from this district of Edina, Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Senate District 49, and I've been in the legislature since my first election in 2012. And I'm excited and humbled and pleased that my caucus of the DFL in the Senate has provided and guided me and gained their confidence in my capabilities to lead during this time. So I am very excited to be part of this. We met yesterday at night and we had a slate of candidates who came forward to take this position. And we all bring a very different perspective and very different leadership styles, but at the end, we are all committed to working together for not only a Senate majority, but also to do the work of the Democrats, of the DFL. And with that, someone reminded me just a few minutes ago what the DFL stands for, of Democratic Farmer Labor Party, which was a coalition by Hubert Humphrey. And it's also the story of how I got to be here in Minnesota. I'm native of Puerto Rico, and I came here to Minnesota to attend the Hubert Humphrey Institute of Public Affairs. So it's insightful and exciting and also inspirational to know that ever since I stepped foot in Minnesota, that Hubert Humphrey was kind of my guiding light. So thank you for being here. I do want to say that our caucus is still in formation in terms of our leadership. We are planning to meet quickly and swiftly to elect the next leaders and assistant leaders and our whips. And we're also going to tackle our campaign side. But with that, I do want to open it up for any questions anybody may have. And I just want to say thank you to all members of the media who reached out during a recent accident I had at Farm Fest. I know a lot of you had my personal cell, and I'm really grateful for your thoughts and prayers. And I want to also say thank you to all the first responders who were there at the scene with our Julie Blaha, who's our state auditor. And thankfully, I do believe in miracles, and we're unscathed, and we were able to leave without broken bones, and with a lot of care from all of you are in our road to full recovery. So thank you for that, and with that, I'll just open it up for any questions.
Senator, Madam Minority Leader, you've been known, as long as I've known you, officially as Melisa Franzen. Can you please explain to me the Lopez and where it comes from and why you're using it now, and how you'd like us to refer to you?
Great, thank you for that question. And I think I'm being very intentional to use my full name, and understanding that I am originally from Puerto Rico, and when we in our culture, when we get married, we use two last names, and we bring our husbands and the wife's name to our children. So long before being a politician, I made a deal with my husband to use his name, Franzen, when we had kids. So my kids are Franzen, but I never lost my Lopez. And I think in this moment where we are trying to walk and be true to ourselves and who we are, I do not want to lose my heritage, and I don't want to lose the sight of what it means for the public and people who came or are coming after me, who look at a Hispanic woman from Puerto Rico who can be a state legislator in Minnesota and now a leader of a caucus. So I think it's very meaningful, not just me personally, but to the people that I want to inspire. Thank you. And I could be referred to Franzen or Lopez Franzen.
So what does it mean to you then to be the first member of the People of Color Indigenous Caucus to be elevated to a leadership role like this in the Senate?
I think it's about time, and I think there's a lot of us who are wanting to step up and have the opportunity to do so. So I think it just inspires people and motivates people to see that we're backing each other up. I know that a press release was sent out by the Posse Caucus earlier today, and these are my friends and colleagues. We come from different parts of our state and districts. We represent different aspects of the DFL, but at the end of the day, we really are really excited, and we promote each other in diversity. We welcome diversity to politics, and I think it's desperately needed at a time where people want to fit into a box. There's a lot of diversity in our politics, especially in our party.
Senator, minority leader is sort of the one job title that whoever has it doesn't want to keep it. They want to be majority leader. So what do you bring to that office, and can you give us a way too early preview of the next election cycle?
Well, thank you for that question. I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse. I think what we just elected last night is someone to lead us to the next session, to do out the next special session perhaps, but also to the future of our party. And regardless of being in the majority or the minority, we have a strong voice and a strong caucus, so they elected me to be their spokesperson. So that is what I'm going to be focused on to set us up for success in the interim and in the next election. If we win, or when we win, I'd be honored to be considered, but I think this is more about meeting the moment and meeting the time where we need to find some common ground and finding a consensus builder. And I think my caucus knows that I'm a hard worker, I'm a hard campaigner, and I love to reach out to my colleagues and even if they disagree with me, learn what makes them tick. So I think I'm focusing on the now, and hopefully we'll be able to have that conversation in November.
Senator, before Senator Kent had announced her decision to step down from her role as leader, you had issued a pretty strong statement critical about handling of a harassment complaint. You resigned your assistant minority leadership position over that. I'm curious, now that you're caucus leader and that outside investigation has started, what are your plans for seeing that through? Are you expecting to make any changes if the report comes out? And I'm just curious if you are planning any staffing changes at the moment while you wait for that review to be completed.
I'll start with some context. As many of you know, I'm a small business owner and I'm also an attorney. And back in my corporate days, I used to also be embedded in employee and labor relations. So I take this issue very seriously, and I know the reputational implications to any organization, but also the legal risks. So my position came from that perspective of taking a strong stance against discrimination and against sexual harassment in the workplace. So that's not going to change. I think what we have to do is listen to our staff, listen to the workers of this building and this institution, make sure that we make the adjustments needed to protect people in this workplace, from people like you who work in the press corps to people that clean our floors in this room. I think we need to protect all of us, and that's the stance we will make. We'll have a leadership discussion as soon as those members are elected, what to proceed, but I believe that is a number one order to work through. And as you all know, there is an open investigation, an outside investigation that's going to be culminating at the end of the year. So we'll know more, but there's steps that we can take now that we have recommendations from staff, for instance.
As a follow-up, how do you intend to win over staff who maybe felt like some of their concerns previously had not been taken very seriously? I think, the staff morale under the previous leader had been a little bit diminished. I'm just curious if you've heard those concerns and if what you intend to do to address those.
Well, I wouldn't characterize that our staff was ever diminished. I think our staff has always had a way to express their opinions and their frustrations. And if there is any recourse that HR has to be involved, we've always had those avenues. I was an intern back a long time ago here with Representative Tina Liebling, and had I had a bad experience, I probably wouldn't be here today. So we want to make sure that we have that experience not only for our interns, but everyone that touches this building. We are not exempt from the law. We make the law, and we must abide by it and also follow and lead by example. So we'll work really strongly on changing maybe the culture or perhaps the perception.
Senator, when you came to the Senate, the DFL still represented quite a bit of greater Minnesota. It's not so much now. How do you see 2022 and beyond and the chances of regaining some of that territory outside the Twin Cities metro?
Well, as you know, it's a redistricting year, so that lines are going to change, and some of them might change drastically, some of them not so much. In greater Minnesota, there might be some differences there, some districts that might merge with others. So time will tell soon enough of what those lines look like, but that's an issue that I personally take very seriously. That's one of the reasons, not the only reason I was at Farm Fest, is because I know that we have to go to the people outside of my district. I'm a suburban mother. I represent a suburb of the Twin Cities, but I also have a business in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. So I see those two. So I need to get outside of my comfort zone to understand issues of rural communities. I also have a family stake in Morrison County, Minnesota, where my husband is from. So I'm regularly in rural Minnesota and up in northern Minnesota, where we also have a family cabin. So I listen. I not only do tourism around, but as a politician, I also want to know what people think in those districts. And we have to resonate as a farmer labor party that we are with those communities. So I'm very committed to that.
Can I get your thoughts on the first couple of policy proposals that you'll have to tackle? One being, do you think any changes need to be made preemptively to the use of force law that the Judge Castro suspended yesterday? And then the second would be on pandemic pay. The Senate has 2 new leaders. Do you see any issues with that?
Well, I have not looked at Judge Castro's ruling, so I have to get back to you on that one. But I certainly think those issues are really important that we tackle here. As I've said before and earlier this morning in another interview, the Minnesota legislature has the power in the licensure of law enforcement, and we have a lot of power to work with law enforcement and what we need in training, what we need in the licensure process. So I think there is a way that we need to work together and not just point out to the deficits in the law enforcement or criminal justice arena. We have the power of making laws and policies. So I would get back to you on the ruling. But on the next question,
Does that law need to be changed?
the use of force,
Yeah, do you think that law needs to be changed?
I would have to get back to you and look at it. I'm an attorney. I'm not going to speak off the cuff on a law that I probably need to brush back up on, but I certainly would love to have that conversation. But the other question, can you repeat it?
Pandemic pay.
Okay.
The fact that the Senate has 2 new leaders now, in what was already a process that had seen stalemate within the panel. Do you think including 2 new leaders in the discussion now only will enhance that stalemate, or do you see an opportunity there?
I think there's an opportunity. I work very well with the new Majority Leader, Senator Jeremy Miller. We're actually part of the Purple Caucus, so I hope that still has some relevancy in what we're trying to do here about bridging those gaps and those differences between our parties. I do think it's an opportunity, and I believe the ball's on the court of the Republicans to make this deal whole and to fulfill that promise that we made in the legislature that we're going to compensate frontline workers. And I think we are all ready for that conversation to take that vote. It's up to the Republicans to keep their end of the bargain.
So no concept yet as to when you might be in session and make your appointment official?
No idea of when we're going back to session. Senator Miller reached out, but we haven't had a chance to sit down yet.
Senator, if we could back up just a little bit to your choosing you as the minority leader, what was your pitch to your colleagues on why to vote for you?
I think you heard a little bit about that already. I'm a hard campaigner, I'm a hard worker, and I promised my caucus that no one would work harder, and I think they believed me. And I truly mean that. And I also value the perspective of members who've been there a lot longer than my 10 years in the legislature, and members from different parts of our state that we have to embrace. And we might not all agree on the issues, but at the end of the day, we have to row in the same direction. And I think people agreed to that, and we left our caucus pretty united, I would say.
Senator, among your caucus, you've got a few different sort of subsets of Democrats, including, really progressive folks and some from, outside Minnesota. And one of the big issues that Senate Republicans are intending to make about during the election is the issue of public safety. You're a suburban Democrat, just curious where you sort of stand broadly on the issue of public safety and what is going to be your sort of answer to the critiques from Republicans that Democrats are seeking to defund the police.
Well, I think what's happening is that we're weaponizing terms and slogans versus actually tackling the issue. Like I said, we have a lot of power to change that rhetoric in the Minnesota legislature. It's not just about the metro. I have a suburban district that if I call my police officer for an emergency, they'll be there in a few minutes. We just had an incident recently with a Somali child that was lost, and you can see how hard our police department, our law enforcement, and our first responders, including fire and the county, work together to try to find this child before we learned the tragic news of her death. we need people to help us respond to emergencies like that, whether you live in uptown Minneapolis or in North Minneapolis or in St. Paul, downtown Minneapolis, or in Edina, Minnesota, where I live. We also need that same level of trust and help and resources, and I think that's what all taxpaying citizens expect of us to fund, and we have funded law enforcement. If you look back at our last session in the last year and a half, we've actually increased funding for these programs. We just want to make sure that there's accountability attached to those funding dollars.
Do you think you can hold a deal in a special session, should there be a special session, to only do the agreed upon topics? Is that something that you think is bargainable, something you can help accomplish? Because it sounds like the governor, even though he thinks that the threat to Jan Malcolm is a bluff, he said, I won't agree to a special session unless we can limit the agenda.
Well, I have not had a chance to speak with the governor either, but I would say that we are very cautious about any changes to the direction that we're having with COVID relief and COVID mitigation and how we're dealing with this pandemic. We're still not out of the woods, so we haven't had a discussion in our caucus yet about it, but I know that we are going to stand strong behind our frontline workers and our educators who want to be protected, and we need leaders to help us navigate through that. And if the highest leader in our agencies is being brought up as a potential, fire, I don't think that we will be able to have those conversations, even though it's going to hurt a lot of the people we made promises to, which are the frontline workers who've already risked so much during this pandemic. So it's unfortunate. I wouldn't want to choose one or the other, but I think the agenda needs to be set with what we agreed upon before adjournment. So again, it's up to the Republicans to hold their side of the bargain.
How did you feel about the Bach and Tomassoni departures from the caucus? Any fear that could be repeated, or are those seats in a reconfigured way in the future that could be brought back into the DFL fold, or how do you view that whole situation?
Well, these are two former colleagues of our caucus, but certainly still colleagues of ours in the legislature, and we still have relationships with these two members. One of them, as you know, is Tomassoni, who is going through some health personal issues himself, and I wish him well, and our caucus wishes him well. We want to make sure that we have a caucus that's united, that could stick to our fundamental values as Democrats. And if they want to come back to us, I think we can have that discussion. And I think some of us would be really eager to welcome them back to the right side of politics.
Are you planning to support the same slate of assistant leaders who have been in place? Or do you think a clean new group is in order?
What we're talking about is having the caucus decide. So we're going to elect all the positions, and whether it's an affirmation or a vote of confidence, I think we have great talent, as you all know, in our caucus, and we want that talent to remain. And those people who are already have step-ups as leader, I think they have an upper hand because they are doing the best they can to represent our caucus. But we're gonna try to. Obviously, my position was open, and we might even add more. So my philosophy is the more the merrier. The more diversity of thought, and the more people who want to do this work, it just makes a stronger leadership team. Any other questions?
Back to Ricardo's question about public safety. What would be your idea of a short-term solution to stop the violence in Minneapolis? The shootings right now, the Star Tribune had a good piece of analysis that showed that it's really concentrated in several neighborhoods. You don't obviously run the city of Minneapolis, but nonetheless, this is a big topic in the political discourse. And what do you think should be done?
Well, I can't speak for the neighborhoods. I can speak for my own knowledge. I have a business on Lake and Bryant, the uptown area, and we had a shooting there several weeks ago after hours, and people want to feel safe. I want to be able to drive to my business and go and have lunch and not have the anxiety that something might happen to me. So like any neighborhood in Minneapolis or in Redwood Falls, we want safety for people to go and about and be living a normal life. And what that looks like, it's up to our communities, but also resources. And again, I would say we want to make sure people feel safe to call the police and know that they're going to be there and be able to deal with the situation. So we have to build that trust or rebuild that trust, and that's going to take more than rhetoric. It's going to take work from the legislature. It's not just going to be one city and one off. I think we have to be good partners with our communities and our law enforcement community, because they do heroic work every day, and we want to make sure that they are also able to have the resources they need to combat any violence in any neighborhood in our state.
Right, with all due respect though, I mean, you approved funding, the increased funding for law enforcement, but in the meantime, there's an epidemic of shootings going on in the city. What should be done right now and through the first of the year, say, you know?
I would speak for myself right now. The caucus, we haven't had other than working with the Republicans trying to find a common place in some of these reforms which have not passed. We've talked about some of the advisory councils, the community councils, and those haven't been met with much support. We've talked about more accountability measures. So I think those are things we can do at the legislature, at the city and local level. Those are, you would have to talk to those elected officials at the local level. I don't want to speak out of school here, but at the state level, we can do more to provide the resources for them to have some more community and relations outreach with communities and really understand what they want as public safety. We can provide all the funding in the world, but if they're not going to use that funding, there's not going to be trust in the communities, we're still going to have an unhealthy community. So we have to really go at the root of it. So I think local engagement of the public is critical with our law enforcement to recreate that trust and rebuild that trust.
Senator, I'm curious, it's an open question if Senate Republicans will be taking up another commissioner vote, confirmation vote, if there's a special session held. Is there anything you can do as the new caucus leader to help Governor Walz keep his commissioner, specifically Commissioner Jan Malcolm, as has been getting some criticism in that caucus?
I certainly want to uphold our end of the bargain when it comes to the front worker pay that we have agreed upon, and we need to come back to confirm that. I will do what I can with the new majority leader in the Senate to try to convince him that that is the best path forward, get our work done, and put the politics aside and put people first in this point. And frankly, it is putting people first by leaving the head of our agency for Health and Human Services that's overseeing the pandemic in our state to really put people first and make sure that we have the best resources available. I think it's a disservice to our state if we, in the middle of a crisis, get rid of the captain. So we really need this person to stay in place, and the public needs to know that this is for public safety, and that is not something we're going to play politics with.
So you mentioned Senator Miller, who was a founding member of the Purple Caucus, and you mentioned that you were in the Purple Caucus. So could this new leadership in the Senate indicate a time of more cooperation?
I sure hope so, and I actually reached out to Senator Miller when he was elected, and I exchanged some thoughts about that. We both have done many programs outside of the legislature that are really geared towards working collaboratively, regardless of our labels and our politics. So I think we'll have a good working relationship. It's a matter of whether his caucus is able to stand with him. Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Senator, no hyphen in Lopez Franzen.
No hyphen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to reiterate, because I had a little battery issue when you were explaining, you said it's optional.
It's optional.
Either way.
It's optional. I will respond.
Senator, what will you put on your letterhead?
Lopez Franzen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.